How you guys doing? Just wanted to talk about a few things in the MMA space today. First thing I want to talk about was Brian Ortega, Mr. T City. Feels like over the last handful of years, Brian Ortega's really just kind of fallen off the wagon. It really culminated last weekend with UFC Walker versus Zhang in China for 5 rounds. Aljamain, Funkmaster, Sterling really beat the brakes off of Brian Ortega. He looked slow, couldn't pull the trigger on punches. Wasn't a lot of takedowns attempts for a jiu-jitsu guy. Really a weird showing for Ortega, and it makes me wonder what's next in his career, honestly. The whole fight was just weird. A couple of days before the actual event, it looked like Ortega was ambulanced out of the venue to a nearby hospital. And then, to my surprise, when I was watching the card, the fight actually happened. Ortega ended up missing weight by 8 pounds. Obviously, not good. I mean, he's 1-4 in his last five. Volk beat him by decision, and then he got TKO'd by Yair. He ended up beating Yair again after he jumped and rolled his ankle during the pre-fight introductions. But then he got smashed by Diego Lopez and completely outworked on the feet by Aljamain Sterling. I don't know. It just hasn't looked very promising for Brian Ortega recently. Um, After this loss, he slips down to seventh. I don't really know who you match up for him next. With his fight history and how long he takes in between fights, usually, my guess is we're not going to see him fight again until either December or early next year. I think a good fight for him would maybe be Patricio Pitbull, someone who won their last fight against Dan Ige, but still needs to prove something. If he doesn't win that, I really don't know what you do with Ortega. Maybe have him go up to 155, but I'm honestly not sure. Moving on to our next story, one that's been making the rounds on both the internet and mainstream media, the Raja Jackson situation. For those of you who don't know, Raja Jackson is the son of UFC Pride MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson. Raja is a amateur level MMA fighter who's been training for a while now. He's 25, and he's also a pretty popular kick streamer. Over the weekend, Raja attended an amateur wrestling event hosted by KnockX Pro, again, an amateur wrestling organization. And there was a wrestler there by the name of Psycho Stu. Raja was allowed to go backstage, and Stu, assuming that he was in on the business or even a worker, approached Raja in character, trying not to break kayfabe, and started to give him some shit. Stu, in character again, got in Raja's face. Raja said, "I don't know who Psycho Stu is." And Stu grabbed what appears to be a prop can of vapor and air and bashed it over Raja's head. Again, in the video, which I cannot show, there's no real physical effects on Raja. He gets upset, gets in Stu's face, and the surrounding wrestlers are quick to reprimand Stu, telling him that he's not a worker, asking him what he's doing, things like that. Once Stu gets the memo, he apologizes to Raja on three separate occasions. At one point, Stu is sitting down in a chair. Raja's talking to him, standing up. Stu apologizes again, shakes his hand. You can even hear Raja say it's okay, and he gets it when Stu's explaining that the camera crew led him to believe that he was in on the business. And to even things out, it's suggested that during Stu's match, Raja can go into the ring and give Stu a couple blows, maybe body slam him, punch him a little bit. Again, all within the confines of it being a wrestling event and people assuming Raja wasn't going to actually try and hurt Stu. What ended up happening, and I'm sure most of you have seen this, is Raja Jackson during the event was on his kick stream. His chat was rage baiting him, calling him bitch made, telling him he wouldn't take shit from a pro wrestler. And Raja slides into the ring, double leg slams Stu into the mat, knocking him out immediately. Stu hits his head and delivers in full mount 25 unanswered punches right to Stu's jaw. It's pretty grim. Eventually, one of Stu's fellow wrestlers is able to get Raja Jackson off of him. When that happens, Raja ends up leaving. He continues to stream, which the footage from that is pretty crazy. And it turns out that Stu was completely unresponsive in the ring afterwards. He was taken to the hospital, and from what it sounds like, he was put in a medically induced coma. He lost a majority of his teeth. Obviously, some traumatic brain damage there. At one point, it sounded like he was choking on his own blood and teeth inside the ring, and just an absolutely horrible situation. Most of the MMA community has come out and spoken up against Raja's actions. People like MMA Guru, Lucas Tracy have put out videos just talking about how horrible it is. Chael Sonnen, however, posted 2 videos. One of them, he just speculates on if all of this was part of a script.
While they were very stiff shots, not what we would call a working shot, it did not appear that Raja had lost his temper. It did not appear that these were being done out of anger.
If, in order to not break kayfabe, Stu was rolling with the strikes, and how the audience doesn't have the information available to judge whether or not this was scripted. Just an absolutely bizarre and horrible take. I can't even begin to imagine what Chael Sonnen thought he saw to have him come up with that opinion.
But your idea that you have all the evidence that you need and you can prove premeditation, which escalates this, by the way, from an assault to attempted murder. You do not get to go arrest Al Pacino for selling cocaine and chopping people up with machetes because you just watched an episode of Scarface.
He then starts to talk about how the audience isn't allowed to be judge, jury, and executioner, and if this was an attempt on Stu's life, how come the police haven't gotten involved yet? As if the police arrest people immediately right when something happens, and like the police don't miss arrests that would be important. It's just a completely absurd and weird bar for Chael Sonnen to set, as if we didn't see Raja Jackson try to kill this man in the ring, frankly. Sean Strickland also threw his hat in the ring, saying that jail should be the last option for kids, and when he was younger, he would have faced up to 8 years for a crime. It was a self-defense charge, but Sean was pretty aggressive with his self-defense, but he ended up getting off without charges, without having to go to jail. I would agree with Sean, but in a case like this, it's not like Raja Jackson was defending himself. He jumped this pro wrestler with no MMA training and proceeded to beat him within an inch of his life. I'm just not sure where people are mixing up these two things. Again, Psycho Stu did not assault Raja Jackson with the intent of killing him. Raja Jackson assaulted Psycho Stu with the intention of killing him. From what it sounds like, Stu is conscious now, according to his family. There's a GoFundMe that they made for him as well. But from the podcast that his fellow wrestlers did, it sounds like Stu doesn't remember the attack and is really just trying to get his bearings at this point. As of this recording, Raja Jackson has not yet been arrested. However, I find it unlikely that he won't face some sort of criminal charges. Rampage Jackson has put out a public statement. I'm going to show it on screen now. Not a whole lot to dive into. Obviously, doing the lawyer talk, trying to paint his son in a little bit of a better light. He does mention that Raja Jackson got hit in the head during sparring. I do understand his concern with that. However, it's not like Raja Jackson got hit in the head and then turned into BJ Penn, who is convinced that his family's been replaced by doppelgangers. And even if that is the case, it's still not an excuse for these actions. Another small bit of news is the possibility of Zhang Wei Li moving up to fight Valentina Shevchenko. People are speculating that that fight is going to happen October 25th in Abu Dhabi, possibly the co-main to the Tom Aspinall Cyril Gane fight. And I know women's MMA gets a bad reputation sometimes, and it's totally justified. I feel like outside the top five in these, a lot of these divisions are pretty talentless. However, I am a Zhang Wei Li super fan. I think she's incredibly entertaining, super skilled, and I think she does have a better chance than people give her to beat Shevchenko. Shevchenko's reach absolutely will be a problem, but the way she's been fighting recently with less striking and a lot more grappling, the way she's smudged entirely Alexa Grasso, I think after Whaley's performance against Tatiana Suarez, it gives me a little bit more confidence in her ability to stuff the takedown. But we'll have to wait and see. And again, just rumored to be happening. Anyway, just wanted to say thank you for watching. I'll have another video out next week for that week's news if anything big comes out. Again, I appreciate it. Comment anything you want to see. Subscribe if you want to. Thank you. Bye.